years now, we've been saying that a new Bretton Woods is inevitable. And this past week, the IMF said exactly the same thing. A new Bretton Woods is coming, baby. Oh, boy. Stacey, what's going on?
Well, so many people and so much media is focused on the clown car show happening in the U.S. elections that they kind of overlooked this whole IMF is calling for a new Bretton Woods, which, of course, would be seismic. It would coincide with the 50-year anniversary, and 2021 is a 50-year anniversary of the U.S. dollar standard. Remember, we went off the gold standard temporarily in August of 1971. Richard Nixon said they were closing the gold window just temporarily until they could default on their debts to England. And, of course, 50 years later, we're still defaulting on the debts. But we could be seeing a new Bretton Woods. Who knows what's going to happen, but you're talking to Simon Dixon in the second half about that. In the meantime, really what's going on is that Thucydides trap that we've talked about, which is the rising power, China, always ends up in conflict with the declining power, which is the United States in this situation. And we certainly see that heating up. And you see that, however, even in the attitudes of people around the world. Here is a chart. Which is world's leading economic power? This question was asked to people in advanced economies around the world. And among advanced economy publics, 48% thought China was the number one power, 35% thought the US, and amongst Germans, it was 55% saw China as a leading power and 17% saw the US. And this is unfathomably low, says Adam Tooze.
And what about the American concern that aiding and abetting this move away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency ultimately means a weakening of the U.S. economy?
It is not necessarily in our interest to have the dollar as the sole world currency because as the world economy grows, it needs additional currency. And if the dollar is that additional currency, it means that the U.S. has to have a chronic current account deficit. And that is not appropriate. So I think it's in our interest as well to reform the system. I think this is a healthy, if painful, adjustment that the world has to go through.
If America doesn't actively take part in this sort of renegotiation of global finance, what will happen? What's your nightmare scenario?
Well, the Chinese will go bilateral. They already do it. They already have a clearing arrangement with Argentina, and I think they're working on one with Brazil, and you will find that there will be more and more bilateral arrangements. So the dollar will remain the main international currency, but its use will decline. So I think that a world of bilateral relations is less desirable than a continuation of a multilateral system. But the system we have now has actually broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. And so you need to create a new one. And this is the time to do it.
All right, Shalom. This is Har One by Yasha Allah of the Lions Den Camp. I want to say Kal Halayim, La Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem, Harakah Kodash, Ma'amah. Double honor to the elder apostles of GMS and the elders. Shalom to you, Akim, Nakwatim, and children that believe in sincerity and truth around the four corners of the earth. Yeah, man. You saw the two clips that I just played. One was from I think it's the Kaiser report. And yeah, man, this thing is major. This whole second or new Bretton Woods agreement. All right. Bretton Woods moment. And they're not really giving it any attention on the media. And this is all by their plan, man. This is all by design. And they're cramming this presidential election down everybody's throat. But what did the Rothschild say before? He said, they said, give me control of any nation's money, and I care not what you do with the laws, meaning they don't care who the president is or what person you put in power. They only care about the money, because that's where the control is at. Now, now that first, would you say Europe set up a world central bank, right? Format with the Bretton Woods Agreement, and then they set up a central bank within Babylon, America, through the Fed, the Federal Reserve. All right. So, yeah, now they're saying that clearly this was part of their plan, man. This is their plan. This is not just happening. It's the Most High's will, but He has put in their heart. Well, I'm gonna get the scripture first. All right. This is Revelation 17 and 15. And He saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So this is Babylon. This is America, the melting pot. All right. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, all right, the 10 common markets of the Roman Empire, which later became the European Union in 1957. It was called the Treaty of Rome. All right. So the European Union today represents the dragon. All right. People like George Soros, those elite bankers. These shall hate the whore. So Europe is going to wind up hating the whore. And they're clearly saying that. The only reason they didn't do away with the dollar is because they're letting the dollar stay established as the world currency. But all these nations, starting with China, are going to be doing bilateral agreements instead of multilateral, meaning instead of China and Brazil doing a deal, including the US dollar, which would be multilateral, meaning more than two countries doing a deal, you know, America having their hand in the pot. Instead, they're doing bilateral deals to where China is doing straight deals with Venezuela or whoever, Russia, Iran, and it's not including the dollar. It's dealing with crypto, it's dealing with oil, it's dealing with the renminbi, it's dealing with any other currency, gold, silver, anything besides the fiat currency dollar. All right, so that's what's happening. They're like, yeah, you can stay as the world power, but we're going to raise China up, you know, and they're going to do deals without your dollar, without the monopoly money. All right. And ultimately, it's going to come to a point where all these nations won't use the dollar. And what is that called? A dollar crash, man. That's a crash of the dollar. That's when all these nations have no faith in the dollar and they've moved away from it and went to a new currency. That's going to crash the dollar, give it no value, even though it's still the world currency. You see the witchcraft in that? It's still the world currency, but it's going to have no power. Hyperinflation. And it's been a standard of hyperinflation in the world ever since the dollar was set up as the world currency, as pegged to gold in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Agreement. It's been a setting for hyperinflation, and now we've reached that point. And now America is lagging behind. That's their plan. That's their terminology of George Soros. He'll say America will be lagging. It's going to let it lag behind until they give in and switch currencies. That's the only option America has, is to what I was doing a lesson yesterday on the SDR basket, special drawing rights. That's what George Soros is talking about. He's saying the special drawing rights that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has created, right? You know, America, especially after around 1960s and 1971, when the IMF established special drawing rights, all right, which is a basket of currencies. And in that basket of currencies, the American dollar was dominant because it was backed by gold. America had most of the gold. Now you hear George Soros and the IMF and Europe saying they have all the gold. They have a huge amount of gold. They got all the gold, man. Most of the gold from, especially anything America had and a lot of these nations. So they're saying, hey, any nation that wants to exist in this new system that they're setting up, you're going to have to go through bilateral agreements, meaning deals without the dollar involved. But by doing so, these countries that cannot pay for the transaction within the special drawing rights pool, it's like saying, hey, you want to use special drawing rights, you got to pay taxes. The nation that cannot pay those taxes or interest on the maintenance, the transfer, right? They're going to have to go to the IMF. They're doing it all again, man. For what? For loans. They're going to say, hey, can we go into your gold reserve and borrow some of that gold to pay off these taxes? See that? It's like getting a loan to pay taxes or interest. So, so it's still not bilateral. It's going to be multilateral. Just dealing with the IMF now. All right. That's basically the pimp taking the wheel from the whore. They're going to strip America of her riches, man, and her wealth. And they're going to leave America powerless again. Basically saying, hey, the way America became the whore before, by bowing down, submitting to Europe, they got to do it again. All right, but this time, hey, America, if you want to exist, you got to create your own currency. That's the only option they got. And that goes along with scripture in Revelation 13. The only option they have is for America to create a new currency within that basket of special drawing right currencies. They're going to have to pull the dollar away and put something else as the face of their currency. Keep America as the world dominant reserve, dominant figure, right? Now with that, so they're going to keep America as the world dominant figure for a while, the dollar. But, in its position, in its position, it's going to have no power. Meaning the dollar has lost value. And though America is known as the world power, their economy doesn't reflect that. The economy is showing horrible results. So they've lost their status as the world power, even though they still are established as the world power. The dollar has lost its power as a world reserve currency, even though it's still established as the world currency. You see that? That's the trick, man. So they're going to force America to switch over to a new currency within the SDR basket. And that's going to be what? They're going to switch to crypto. They're going to create, I'll have to deal with what you call Fed coin or Bitcoin, some type of cryptocurrency. It was going to be tied to the chip. All right, they're going to cause everybody, small and great. I'm going to get that scripture. All this is happening right now, right before the great day of Yahweh Shem Shai's judgment. These devils are moving with their plan. They're moving with great wrath. But check this out. It says Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, man, and shall make her desolate and naked. So they're in the process of that. That's their plan. That video I played from George Soros at the end, that was from like 5 years ago. And he's saying everything that's happening now. All right. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So ultimately, America's going to be burned with fire. In Europe, the one that established America, is going to play a part in that. Ultimately, instigate the destruction of America. Okay. For Yahweh have put in their hearts, so it's the Most High's will, to fulfill His will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of Yahweh shall be fulfilled. And when did they give their kingdom, this world, this earth is given. The earth has been given into the hand of the wicked, the Roman Empire, all right, the Greeks and the Romans, starting with Alexander, the Crete, or the Macedonians, Greece, and then it moved to what? The Roman Empire, according to Daniel chapter 7. All right, and the Roman Empire became what you call the dragon, which established the beast, which is NATO, and the dragon together, and America, the whore. All right, through their riches, and which basically reestablished the Roman Empire all over again, or what you would call the common markets. Okay, so they gave all their power into America until the prophecies are fulfilled. All right. So now let's get into this. This is Revelations 13:1. And it says, now, and from the Kaiser report, you heard what she said. She said, hey, man, usually when any country is fallen, they always go to war with the country that's being raised up, all right, that's excelling. And China is the one that they want to go to. They want China to be the lead. All right, have Russia be the muscle, and America be the lagging nation that's falling behind. And and he said it's not in Europe's best interest to keep America as the dominant figure in the world. All right, so they want to end that first system and move to a new world order, to where they'll be administering interest, loans, according to gold, all right, within their SDR basket. And they'll basically be putting these nations into debt. All right. So now let's get this Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. All right. And the waters where the horse sitteth are peoples, nations, and tongues. All right, Revelation 17, I just read that. So, meaning, what you would call NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was accumulated out of the masses of these people, right? Of these Edomites. And NATO was established, the beast. So it says, all right, having 7 heads, all right, that's NATO, and 10 horns, and that's the EU. And upon his horns, 10 crowns, and upon his head, the name of blasphemy. All right. So, now it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. All right. So that's letting you know the beginning of this beast, this European Union / NATO accumulation. All right. With the Western world. And it says what? So you had 10 crowns, which represents the Roman Empire, Europe, the rulers. All right. And upon his head, the names of blasphemy. A bunch of blasphemous nations. And it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. And that started with the Greek Empire. All right. Ultimately with Alexander. Okay. Of the Macedonian. But Greece didn't officially join into NATO until 1955. But they were always a part of that European Union, the dragon. All right. So the leopard represents Alexander, or the Greeks, because that's where it started at, with the Diadochi, Alexander the Diadochi, Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, which gave way for the Roman Empire to be established later. Anyway, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and that the feet represents the end of a system. If you read Daniel chapter 2, it talk about the 10 toes. All right. So at the end, these 10 toes are going to be mixed with miry clay. And the Lord was going to take them at the 10 toes, meaning that we're at the end. We're at the end, man. The 10 toes represent the 10 common markets today called the European Union. All right. So when it speaks about the feet of an image or a system, it's talking about the end of that system. The end of Esau's world. This is the beginning of their rulership. And with the war between Russia, Western Europe and Eastern Europe, America, and all these other nations, that's going to be the end of this system, Esau's world. And that goes with 2nd Ezra chapter 6. Esau is the end of the world. Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. All right. So now it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. And that was around 334 BC. All right. Or 336 when Alexander became the king over Macedon, the Macedonians. And now Russia, they fell as the Soviet Union, especially around 1991, and George Soros was involved. All right. The European Union or NATO really became more powerful when the Soviet Union fell. And when they rose back up in 2016, the Soviet Union, according to the scriptures, the Lord put hooks in their jaw, in Russia's jaw, and turned them back to that old Soviet Union nation. When he did that, that made the Brexit, or when the Brexit happened in 2016, or began, that's when the Soviet Union got sparked up again. All right, so this is all according to prophecy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. And you understand Ezekiel 38, it speaks about the war between Gog and Magog. All right, it's talking about Moscow, in Russia. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion. Okay, and that was what? Britain. Okay, that's what their symbol is, the lion. And that was the mouthpiece that really started everything in World War I, and also the Bretton Woods Agreement. It was Britain that sat down and established everything. Okay. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So the dragon gave NATO their seat and great authority. All right, in the world. Established NATO in 1949, all the way to 1951. All right, all these different countries, they established a tripod system, just like what was it called, man? The triumvirate. Okay, 69 BC. All right. With I think his name was who was that? Marcus Crassus, Julius Caesar, and Pompey. All right. Anyway, that was a tripod system that was set up to protect the Roman Empire, the Caesars and the Senate. Today, you have NATO, that's the military machine that's set up to protect Europe, or the European Union. Okay. So they gave NATO its seat and great authority, and Europe took the back seat. All right, and became the financiers, while NATO became the military structure to protect from Eastern or Eurasian countries like Russia and China. All right. So they established NATO for that reason. And and gave it its power and seat and authority in the world. And they set up America, the whore, as the spearhead, as the leader of NATO. Thus you have Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Thus you have the war on Serbia, where they bombed it, nuked it. Thus you have all the military campaigns around the world. All right. And to protect the backing of America and they gave America the go-ahead or the green light to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was Europe. All right. Those Europeans, man. European Union. They gave America the go-ahead, the green light to drop the bombs and end the war. And then after that, they moved quick to establish this banking system after these nations were crippled. The leading nation at that time was like places like Germany. All right. There was a rising power. And they did away with that and they rose up America as the world power. Now they're ready to put America down and they want to rise up China as the world power. See, that's why the scriptures say they think themselves to be God, and they're not. They're not the power. Yahweh Bashim Yahushai rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomsoever he will. All right. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. That was 1949 with the establishment of NATO. All right. All the NATO allies. Then going into the 1950s, where all these other nations started joining in. Okay. And so it started with the first initial launch of this new system, or that first world order. It started with the Western Union. Okay. Around 1948. It was called the Western Union. That was the re-emerging of the Roman Empire. All the nations over there in Europe came together. I think it was called the Economic Coal. Anyway, I forgot what it was. The European Economic Coal Industry, and that's what they were called before it was called the European Union or the Western Union. All right. So before that, it was called the European Economic Coal Community. And that was those European nations that were the richest over there. They were dealing with iron. They were dealing with coal. And iron and coal are the main basis for war. You know, iron to create the machines, coal to fuel the machines in World War I and World War II. So what stopped those nations in Europe from going to war as it began to become more impoverished into the pit, right? What happened is, what stopped them from beefing with each other in Europe is this new agreement to create a financial union. It was called the European Union. All right. They wanted to create the European Union, and they did that in 1957. Okay. Going to 1958. When they established the European Union as the power seat, as the financiers, you know, to the lesser European nations, or to their new military monster or machine called NATO. All right. So what else did they do? Now let's read. So it says, and the dragon gave him his power and seat and great authority. So the power of the European, what would you call Rome, or the European Union. That's what established. Through that, they came together, some of those countries, and they established what you call NATO. All right. And they established NATO, man, in 1949. And ultimately in America, in DC, is where NATO, one of the branches of NATO, is located. All right. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. It's talking about the Roman Empire. And all the world wondered after the beast. So one of his heads represent the Roman Empire. It was wounded to death. I mean, it didn't exist. The Western Roman Empire, it fell completely. It started falling around the 1st century AD, a little bit before that, around 90, right after Domitian. With going into Nerva and Trajan, you know, all the way up to Septimius Severus, and skip that, you go to 410 AD. All right, 410 AD was called the fall or sack of Rome. That was when all the Vikings and the barbarians that were plucking away at the feathers of the eagle of Rome, they finally came up in there and they just took the place down. All right, in the western leg of Rome. And that's when you have the rise of Constantine in the east and Constantinople, right? Constantine, a so-called black man. But now, in 1266, you had the Ottoman Turks that came out of there, out of the mountains, the Caucasus, and they came down and into Istanbul, started taking all those places back and taking over Constantinople and taking all their lands back from the Byzantine Empire, which was our people. All right, our people being wicked, but they were still our people. They were Israelites. Constantine, you know, and they took back all those places. And the Ottoman Turk Empire ran all the way up until 1800s and 1900s. And that's when you have Caesar Borgia, the 1400s, right? 410 AD or the 1400s. Perfect 1,000 years, man. Right? Then you have the establishment of the Roman Catholic Church and them starting their racism in 1488. And all the way up until today, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and they started their, what you would call the slave race, right? The race was on for them to get rich and put us in slavery. All right, the race around the world to find this new world so they can start their world order. So now, his deadly wound was healed. It fell in 410 AD. And Europe's deadly wound, the Roman Empire's deadly wound, was healed with what you call the Treaty of Rome. All right, the Treaty of Rome. Now, this happened what, in 1957? Okay, 1957. So you had NATO, 1948, 1949, and you had almost a little 10 years later, you had 1957, the European Union established the Treaty of Rome. All right, the Treaty of Rome. All right, so the Roman Empire was basically reestablished because you had NATO, you had the European Union, and now they were about to create something called the Western European Union. And that's when you get your 7 heads and 10 horns. All right, and that's when you involve America, and they created a pact with America. So that dragon reached all the way from Europe to NATO, all over the world, and ultimately to the West with America. And through America, they were able to rob the world of all their riches and just pull in all the world's riches like a dragon pulls in before it burns everybody. All right, so, and I saw I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. That's the Roman Empire when it fell, 410 AD. And his deadly wound was healed. 1957, the Treaty of Rome. And all the world wondered after the beast. So everybody gave in and started looking at NATO and Europe as being the powerhouse instead of looking at Russia. Because Russia, I think a few years later, they started something called the Warsaw Pact. It was basically a response to Europe creating NATO. All right. So that was the whole thing, to create a future for Europe. All right. And that's what they wanted to do. So that's why they set up this Bretton Woods Agreement. And now they're going into a new Bretton Woods Agreement. And this new Bretton Woods Agreement is going to be not uncoupling gold from the dollar, or getting rid of gold or selling off gold or establishing gold as the world currency. Instead, they're going to keep the dollar as the world currency, and they're going to force America's hand to switch that dollar into something else, to reform it into a crypto system and the chip. And by doing so, once they do the reset, they're going to see that none of these nations need gold except for America, because America has been robbed of all its gold. They got gold in Colorado. They might start digging out there in the mountains soon, digging on land. That's why they do offshore drilling for oil. Now they're going to do onshore drilling for oil. They need something to back their new currency. If they don't, guess where they got to go to? Their daddy. They're going to go to Europe. Like George Soros said, he said, hey, they got all the gold. They're going to be able to pay the difference for America in their transactions in the SDR basket, making America even more of a whore for the European Union. All right. Desolate and impoverished. See that? So Europe is America's lifeline. So now let's keep going. Verse 4. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, man. It financially gave it power, military power, might. And laid out their plan for it. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. All right. So they submitted, all these nations submitted unto Europe because they were afraid of this new NATO alliance that they had. Right. And that's what they started, what you call Christianity and their demonocracy, going around the world, conquering different lands, putting pressure on these nations, extorting them, forcing them to use the dollar. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? All right. And that's what all these nations have been preparing for, to make war with NATO, to make war with the European Union, to make war with America. All right. And that's why the Lord said this. Joel 3:9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. These heathens. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. So the Lord making a way for these nations to go to war with America now and to go to war with the beast. All right. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And that's what China's saying. According to those percentage results that the lady was reading in the beginning of this video, she said Germany, all these other nations, they thought, or they believe and see that China is the world power, not America. It was 15% for China, 17% for America being the world power. So these nations have said what? They're strong now. And they've created this their nuclear arsenals and advanced technology. All right. Missiles, the unstoppable missile. The Vanguard. They got all this shit, man. And the Lord has given them that power, made them ready. All right. So all these nations have put all their finances into, just like in 1991, that's how the Soviet Union fell. They tried to put all their money into their military industry. And through that, their economy began to fail. All right. Same thing in the 1930s with America. Or in Germany, I mean. With Kaiser Wilhelm, with World War I. They put all that money into their navy and their ships and into the war, that they had something called the turnip winter, to where their whole nation had nothing to eat but turnips. They was pulling them out the ground and eating them because the economy was crashed. Same thing gonna happen right here in America, man. All right. But all these nations have put all their investments into their military infrastructure, built up their advanced technologies, overpowering America, overshadowing it. even though America still remains as the world dominant figure with the military. They got bases all around the world, bases loaded. But now those bases can be taken over by these other foreign nations like Iran. They threaten to take over all America's bases in the Middle East. All right. So, and they have these bilateral agreements to where they can do away with the dollar in trade. All right. So all this is stripping power away from America. It's sort of like that Steven Seagal shit. You know, that's his fighting style. That's what China's doing with America, or the python. That's what Europe is doing with America. As America takes a deep breath and tries to get its strength, this python tightens its grip. And every breath that it takes, America loses more and more breath. And the python tightens the grip more and more. Steven Seagal, somebody strong try to punch him, his fighting style, he used that against them, using their power against them, that flow of energy. And that's what China's doing with America. All right. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So this is what the War of Armageddon. All right. So Revelation 13:4. And they worshiped the dragon. So everybody submitted to Europe. All right. Western Europe. Through the European Union and through NATO. This conjuring up of a power to where they reestablished the Roman Empire in a different way. All right, so saying who is like unto the beast, who is like unto NATO, and who is able to make war with him. So they like, yo, shoot, they submitted to Europe because of NATO. And there was, especially when European Union, the dragon, gave power to America to call fire from the sky, which gave them the green light to drop the missiles on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. All right, that was the first atomic bomb that was dropped. And that scared the shit out of all these nations, establishing NATO and America as the world powers under Europe. And then that's when you have this next part. Because of that, because of those missiles being dropped, scared the shit out of all these nations, it put America on the map as a world power after World War I. All right, World War II, America was not a dominant figure until the end of the war. You know, and then after that, they dropped that missile, it shut everything down. It immediately ended the war. And then this happened. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And who was that? It says what? And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. That's about 3.5 years or so. Now that's talking about who? What was his name, man? President Eisenhower in the 1950s. All right, 1955, if I'm not mistaken. He was the mouth, the presidency of America, I'll say that, became the mouthpiece for NATO. And you can look it up. People looked at this dude like an angel that was sent. And every time he spoke, all the nations would listen. And because of that, they put him as the spokesperson for NATO in the 1950s. And through that power seat, he established what you would call in God we trust on the dollar. They established the Christian mindset here in America, calling America a Christian country, which was basically a political ploy to go against Russia being atheists. So they were looking at that to gain power or a better seat with the Roman Empire, you know, the Roman Catholic Church and such. All right, so this guy Eisenhower, he set up what you call the dollar where it says in God we trust, and that's blasphemy. This place does not trust in God. They trust in their power, which is money and wealth. All right. And also you have the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God. That was added to the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, one nation under God. There's no one nation under God. There's only Israel that's under God, under Yahweh. All right. So that's the mindset here in America. And their idols they trust. And also, what was on the pledge? It said, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a complete lie, man. So that's blasphemy. All right, that he's not a man. Eisenhower was not a man of the Lord, and he shouldn't have been dealing with the scriptures, acting like a prophet. Now it says, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name. It's talking about America and his tabernacle and them that dwell therein, dwell in heaven. All right, so America started pushing their agenda, and lying, calling themselves a Christian company, a God-fearing nation when they're not. And blasphemy is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, lying against the truth. Now it says, verse 7, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, creating America as what? The world power. All right, after World War II, especially around the 1940s, after 1945, all the way up to the 1960s. Those were called the thriving years of America. All right, or really up to the 70s. And within that, you had Abba Bivens teaching in the 60s and 70s. So this is all happening right according to the Most High's will, his plan, and his timing. Verse 8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. And that's today. We're in that time from the 60s all the way up until now, to where if your name is not written, if you're not predestined to be one of the elect, men, women, or children, then these people are going to worship and submit to Esau's system. All right, and they're going to do that through the mark of the beast, the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world. And two-thirds of our people are going to worship Esau and worship Satan. All right, and submit to this system. That's what they're going to do. And it says what? If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Basically saying, don't worship this damn beast or this dragon or Esau or anything besides Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, because they're going into captivity as well. I don't care how powerful they get. The Lord like, Yahweh Shai has the keys of hell and death. He rules in the kingdom of men. All right. He's like, don't forget that. All right. He that leadeth into captivity, the slave trade, they let us over here and they got to pay for that. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword, and the commission for us to go into slavery started with the Roman Empire. All right. So they're going into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. All right. Because if you're not a saint, sanctified, or Israel, an elect, holy, then they're going to be part of that number of the ones that worshiped the beast in the system, according to verse 8. All right. So if your name is written in the book of life of the Lamb, Yahweh Shai, that was slain, meaning he died for you, of the elect. If your name is written in that of life, then you'll be one of the ones that are waiting in the patience and the faith of the saints for Esau to be led into captivity and to be killed with the sword. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake like a dragon. This is America. All right. They were rising up as a powerhouse in the earth, like Rome did, strong as iron. If you read Daniel 7, it breaks that down, from Greece to the Roman Empire, the iron, right? The legs of iron, the eastern and western leg of Rome. And then you have the war of the 1700s with America versus Britain, Spain, and I think it was Italy or France. I can't remember. But yeah, France. So and that established America in 1766, which you call the Declaration of Independence, 4th of July, right? So that was all the process of America shining in glory, becoming the Babylon, becoming the whore, becoming the power seat, right? And then after that, scriptures say in Daniel 7 that the Lord is going to, in the midst of that, set up a kingdom right here on this earth. And he's doing that according to Amos chapter 9, where he's rebuilding the tabernacle of David. The wad meaning love, the tabernacle of order. All right, the tabernacle of David that was promised to be rebuilt upon this earth in the spirit first. The spiritual tabernacle. Until Yahushua shows up to deliver his people and bring it all together. You got to go pick up the stones and bring them together to create the building. Verse 13, and he doeth great wonders. What's like it? Verse 12, and America exercised all the power of the first beast, talking about the Roman Empire or NATO. So America used all the power of Roman Empire and NATO, so they became the spearhead for NATO before him, and caused the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So through America, all these nations submitted to NATO and submitted to Europe, the Roman Empire. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. World War II. And they filmed it. They had film. That was when the film started kicking up, before they added color to it. All right, you had the movie theaters taking off after the 1930s, which was a distraction from the Great Depression. So they had it already in place. They were filming in black and white, sending videographers over with the war now, running around with the camera and shit, trying not to get shot. You seen it in the movies. So he did great wonders, right? The atomic bombs, nuclear age. That's when the nuclear age began in the after 1940s, after the war, World War II. That started the dawn of the nuclear age. You can look it up. And the scriptures say that the wars of old were fought with garments rolled in blood and yelling, like Braveheart, 300 fighting with swords and up close. But this coming war was going to be fought with burning and fuel fire. So it's going to be a nuclear war. All right. So through America, the nuclear age got established. And through the nukes, America is going to be destroyed. All right. So rolling that stone up a mountain is going to roll right back on themselves. It says, verse 13, and he doeth great wonders. All right. And that's why it says Satan showed up doing all lies and wonders. All right. So that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. It's crazy, right? Scared the shit out of the world with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, meaning through fear, though they deceived the world and the nations through the threat of destroying them. That's why America, even Trump, he's still throwing them threats out to these nations and Iran. But now the weak are saying they're strong, and they're not afraid of that. They got their military defenses built up, their economic defenses built up, system, and that's all the power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. He made these nations strong against America, man. While America still stays in its original power position. But the Lord made these nations stronger than that. With something that they thought could not happen. All right. What's impossible with man is not impossible with Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. So America was given that power to drop the missiles, all right, while Europe watched from a distance. All right. And that's where you have that Western European Union. That's what it's called, man. It went from the Western Union to NATO to the European Union, the Treaty of Rome, and they all merged together and created the Western European Union. Okay. So he had power to do these miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. All right. Saying to them in the sight of NATO. So, all right, with the attachment of NATO, because any nation goes to war with America or the NATO countries, NATO allies, it's like you go to war with one, you got to go to war with all the nations. If America gets hit, then they get funding and finance from Europe. Thus, you have September 11th, false flag attacks. When that happens, they get funding from Europe, protection. All right, so, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. So, like, I'm gonna start from here. And deceiveth them, verse 14, and deceiveth them. So the deceiver, right? Who's the deceiver? Esau. The devil. That's what the word devil means. Diablos, deceiver. And deceived them that dwelleth on the earth, that dwell on the earth, by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. All right, so they're making a system established for Europe or the Roman Empire. This whole banking system, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, the World Bank. All right, this whole military setup. You had Britain join around 1971 into NATO, and then later on to exit, calling it the Brexit. So they were all merging and coming together and creating a more powerful stance in the world through their finance and their military and their philosophy and their government. The government here in America is basically a complete reflection of the government in Rome, the Senate, the Congress, right? Certain laws that they put in place. And you can go on and on, even going as far as the eagle that's on the dollar. It goes back to pagan Rome, which goes back to their Greek mythology. All right. Verse 15. And he, talking about America, had the power. See, they're the powerhouse. So they have power to give life unto the image or system of the beast of NATO and Europe, the European countries. All right, basically saying of Rome, all right, the Roman Empire. So America became the revised Roman Empire. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, to the system of the beast, the new world order. The first world order, America had the power to establish the dollar and to separate the gold standard in 1971 with Nixon. All right. basically doing away with the Bretton Woods agreement, but it's still kept the dollar as the world currency because of the Bretton Woods agreement. But now they're doing away with that and calling for a new world order or a new Bretton Woods moment, to where they have China as the powerhouse, and they go ahead and make that move towards pushing the dollar over the hill or pulling the plug on it. And he had power to give life unto the system of the beast, that the image or system of the beast, the Roman Empire, should both speak and cause, right? They're speaking now. It's happening now. They're pushing this pandemic. They're pushing the agenda through the media, through any branch that's reaching through America from Europe. All right, so they're giving life unto the image of the system of the beast and cause it to speak. All right, they're pushing that agenda and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay, and that's what time we're coming into. If you don't want to be a part of the system, they're going to put people, they're threatening people with concentration camps, murder in the streets from the police, whatever, man, whatever forms of death that they're talking about. Right, famine, not feeding people and shit like that. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, man. And that word mark is charagma, which means a prick or etching or stick into the hand, okay, with an object. All right, so it's going to be in the right hand or the left hand, anywhere in your body. If you put that damn chip there, microchip, that's what that represents. Okay, and you won't be able to buy or sell. And you see over in Sweden, they already switched over to the chip. Australia, they're switching over. China switched over to cryptocurrency now. So they're setting up the basis for this new system, man. America, they're going touch free. They're moving over to electronic and crypto systems, even with electronic licenses and shit like that, man. And they're setting up for the chip. They putting microchips in people and talking about a vaccine. We're in that time. So you know for sure this is a pandemic. Plandemic. And it says, and that no man might buy or sell. All right, so you won't be able to buy or sell without this chip. It's not an embargo. That don't make no damn sense. It's not Christianity. That don't make no damn sense. What is it? It's going to be the microchip. That's something they're going to put in somebody's hand and cause, according to 16, to receive the mark. So they're going to give in and take it. They're going to worship the system. All right. Calling the Roman Empire and the Edomites their masters. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And they're doing this through their call for a new Bretton Woods agreement. It's happening right now, man. All right, this is prophecy being fulfilled right before our face. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. I'm talking about Esau. And his number is 666, and that's Chi Psi Stigma. Chi representing the actual crypto blockchain system or setup, ABA system or frequency, an interface where information can be sent to and from. And then you have a Psi, all right, which is the actual chip, the housing or the body of it, the grain of rice or whatever size it is. And stigma represents the cut or incision into the hand, where they're going to place it at, or into the forehead. All right, man, with this, Isaiah 55 and 10. For as the rain cometh down, and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower and bread to the eater. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. All right, so we at the end, man. And according to 2nd Ezra chapter 9, let me get that. All right, 2nd Ezra chapter 9 and 1. He answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself. We at the end of Esau's age and going into the kingdom of Israel, of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. So we at the time of war. All right. Of a transition happening. A changing of the guard. A kingdom being flipped right side up. All right. The time of the Lord's judgment. And when thou seest part of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, the Lord told us everything. He even told us about the chip, the RFID chip. All right. So all this is past, and we're at the end, and they're about to push the chip on the world scale. They're about to make the chip the world currency. They have no choice. They're going to do it. The dollar is going to remain as the world currency, meaning they're going to replace that world currency with the new world currency. And it's going to be that chip. And all these nations, these other nations are setting up for it anyway, through their bilateral agreements, through their blockchain and cryptocurrency setups. All right, backing their currency by gold or silver or oil and moving it to crypto. Electronic-based systems. It says, then shalt thou understand. See, we understand, if you're in this truth, that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. All right, so he ain't let nobody know when it was going to happen, but he did show us through his prophecies. All right. And that's why as the rain comes down and the snow comes down to the earth, right? The prophecies come down in his word to encourage the hopeful elect, and also to bring about his will, the Father's will, all the way up to the end. 2nd Ezra 4 and 37. By measure have he measured the times, and by number have he numbered the times, and he doeth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. So with that, hope this is edifying for you, and I'm going to say shalom.